Going at a good clip.
Okay.
¿Alguien va a ocupar interpretación hoy en español? Alza la mano. Anybody need translation in or interpretation in Spanish? Nope. Okay.
Okay, let's call this board meeting to order at 6:30. First up is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I hear a movement for approval of the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as listed.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Any dissents? Comments from the public? Mr. Gardner.
Mr. Chairman, we have 3 comments from the public. The first commenter made 2 points, a concern about custodian cleaning guidelines in the schools and a concern about custodial staffing. And just to respond to that, we have added 3 custodians, FTE, here over the last 2 weeks to flesh out the staff a little bit more. Public comment number 2, concerns about high school start times being a little bit too early and not in alignment with what research shows about high school students. Finally, public comment number 3, concern about information shared in the listening session. I believe it was about kitty litter in schools, and concern in general about the support of transgender youth. Those are the 3 public comments. The student investment account, public comments, we have no comment.
Okay. One of the things I like to talk to that Superintendent Gardner's doing is he's trying to figure out ratios for different buildings and amount of students and all those kind of things, and really make sure that we have adequate resources, i.e. staff in all the different places. And one of those things is our custodians, right? And all our different staffing needs to be distributed according to fairness, and the idea that we needed some more custodians was obviously something that was true. Okay, board business. Superintendent's comments. You're up again, Superintendent.
So in general, I've really appreciated the staff and their work this fall. We have several illnesses that confront us right now, even beyond COVID, which has not shown a large number of cases. However, flu and the respiratory disease, and what are we here today? Foot and mouth is even a possibility right now. And I've just really appreciated the general resilience of staff in the face of these absences. We very often see VPs, behavior specialists, and even principals will cover classes, sometimes for a period and sometimes for longer during the day. And so that is, that's a drag on our system. It's a drag on student learning. You had asked to talk a little bit about room clears. Checked on that. They are happening once in a while. Very often you see a student who has great difficulty, trauma affected, things like that, that can force a kid to break down in a way that they begin to engage in behavior that is unsafe for the other students. We do not have, school staff that are waiting in the wings for that, where they can remove that student bodily from a classroom. That is unsafe to adults and to other kids. And so we will engage in a room clear. Talked a little bit about the policies. When an incident like that happens, we are working hard to understand and put interventions in place, begin to move that student through a process to determine where their best placement is, what other things that we can do. And those policies sometimes take a little more time than a given parent would prefer. But obviously, room clears will happen, and they've happened They've happened in several schools here. They've happened in most districts across the state. And we just do not have the employees and the authority to go in and lay hands on a kid and then remove them or restrain them like that. And so a lot of times the kids, for safety's sake, will have to leave for a little bit and then, reinstate the class. And there are procedures for that as well. So, December 13th, we are working towards having a legislative summit, which is before the legislature begins, for Lynn Benton Lincoln senators and representatives who serve in the Oregon legislature to come and meet with boards from across the Lynn Benton Lincoln area. Tanya Everest, the LBL superintendent, is working to set this up. And so we will see. Right now, I think it's mostly contingent on the legislators themselves saying that they, yes, will be there. And then if we can get enough, we will actually go through with that. But that'll be, you have a board meeting the 12th, and then that night would be the 13th. And so we will keep you informed. I think December 5th is the cutoff date. Is that correct, Jane? Or Chris?
Yes.
And we will know at that time whether or not we have a legislator or enough legislators to conduct the meeting.
So this is being put on by the ESD, or is this being put on by OSBA, or who's this being put on by?
The ESD is organizing this. Some of the area superintendents have asked that we do this, and this is something that a lot of regions will do, just so that legislators can hear from their constituent board members and superintendents prior to the legislative session about the priorities.
Okay.
Question?
Yes.
How many's enough?
We haven't set a high threshold. I want to say if we can get 2, that would be great. I think that there are 6 total when you go all the way to the coast, and then all the way to Mill City and Sweeto.
Okay, if that doesn't materialize, might we meet with our local delegation? I think I know all of them. I think most of us do. They're passionate about getting us the resources we need for kids to be successful. And just big group, big meeting, lots of people, but it all comes down to relationships at the local level at the end, doesn't it?
So if this one were to fall through, we could definitely start working on that for locals.
Thank you.
In December, I'll be meeting with the Millersburg city manager to discuss the potential to sign an agreement there. And thanks, Roger, for putting us on that. But that would be a look at an agreement for property in the Millersburg. He sent an email back, I think, and said, they already have ground that they've picked out specifically, and then we'd probably just need to do some due diligence on the property to look at that. And that would be an agreement that hopefully would give us the right to use that in the event down the road, just as a basis for planning that we could look at property out there as a site for a school. At your place, you guys have, and I think, Roger, you had mentioned this at a meeting the other day when Lisa had talked about some of the strategies and the systems that we use. It is here, and it's a really great sheet, and I don't really want to read the whole thing. But Lisa, do you want to add any comments about that?
Nope, it's just descriptive for the multi-tiered systems of support that we have specific to academics. It's also for behavior, but for students who are in need of intervention or support based on their academic performance and needs.
Thank you. And then in light of the length of this agenda, I rest.
Okay, thank you. To kind of circle around a little bit to classroom clears, I know you and I discussed this. We certainly want the public and parents to feel like if they're reaching out to us, that they're being contacted and returned phone calls in an adequate amount of time, So if that's not happening, please raise it up the next level, right? Our superintendent has told the administrators they need to respond to you, and if they're not, please bring it to our attention so we can help them realize their job. Board reports. Michael, do you have anything you'd like to
I
report?
don't have anything tonight.
I do real quick. I had the opportunity to go to Coos Bay and work with some Bandon students. And we were helping spawn salmon. It's the second time I've done it. And this is the first time because of COVID, we actually had some 5th and 6th graders in the pool netting the salmon, and it was a hoot. So it'd be wonderful if we could ever find a way to get something done like that here. But they had a classroom, got to teach them through the whole life cycle of the salmon and how it worked. And then we actually got to go put hands on and spawn salmon. So it was a lot of fun.
I think I'm the next item as well.
Superintendent goals report, you sure are.
Okay, thank you. And I
I
think,
guess we kind of jumped together a little bit.
are we going to put that on the board, Chris? Okay.
Sorry about that.
Technology issue. Hang on, so sorry.
Are you Frankfurt? To the far side of the Pacific. Are you putting a show on for us tonight? No. Oh, okay.
Did we have any other board member reports we wanted to do while we're kind
Yeah,
of waiting?
you
If
wanna-
Do you want us to keep going?
Board member.
Okay.
Come back to me.
Come back, yeah.
See, I knew, that's why I went to it. Eric, do you have anything you'd like to talk about?
No, sir.
Roger?
I'll pass at this time, time permitting later. I'll maybe have some items, but
Okay, okay. Couple things for me, like to talk about, so we had a request for a proclamation about parents' rights. I do think parents are very important, a part of the triangle here to get our kids to a successful point. The board, and we need to include them as partners in moving our children forward in the right direction. One of the things we did back in the summer when Andy initially came on is we'd been getting lots of requests for proclamations, and if you've been watching these, we do a lot of proclamations, right? And it's not necessarily bad, but we didn't want to get some every month, and then have to deal with that. So we decided in August, we're going to review what proclamations we have and then decide the next year's proclamations. So I'm definitely a big supporter of parents' rights, and I believe this board would be for that proclamation. But we're going to wait for August to approve that to be done at that time. I'm sorry, it's your turn. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I just also wanted to reiterate how important parents are to us. And Pete and I had kind of talked about this, and we just didn't feel like it was right to not keep with our system. But we certainly want to acknowledge all the things that parents bring and help their children learn and to move forward in their schoolwork and their growth. And they're just incredibly critical to the part of the educational system, and I'm looking forward to being able to have a proclamation for them at some point.
Looks like Superintendent, you might be ready to go.
Okay. So we'll talk about the 3 goals. You guys adopted those along with me in early September, and we've been working on those. There are 3 goals. I really believe that, that there are always going to be a real focus, not too many goals. Where there are a lot of goals, there are no goals. And of course, this isn't all the work that's being done, but we'll take you through these. The first goal is strategic plan completion, and we will, by the end of this year, be instituting an annual goals and progress review process that will incorporate the strategic plan priorities for all schools, as well as annual goals for departments that will incorporate new programs and implementations. Let's go to the next slide. So where we're at now, you guys can see that September and October had a lot of detail in them, and those have been accomplished, and now we are at the November to January. Over the course of the next month and a half, we will begin to take February to June, where there's not much there. We'll begin to flesh that out in greater detail. You guys will see in January, the strategic plan as it exists, but even then, it won't quite be in its final form. There are several measures which we will end up creating surveys of staff, teachers, community parents that will help us as well to have, feedback, and we'll be able to set some goals off of those. But we will be transitioning into goals as we go into budget and then through budget, and then hopefully we can get to where at the end of this year, we have pretty clear goals for each school that they will work on as we go forward. And then at some point, we'll be talking to you guys about how you guys are able to enter in and listen and learn in that process as well. So, but right now, we are still in the building of this initial plan and then setting the targets that we will go through. And Lisa's done a great job of working through that. I also want to give Javier credit, Stafford Boyd, and Sue Luthra a lot of credit as well on that work. And then, of course, the directors will be joining us as well in those goals. So, but that will be, we'll try to flesh out, we'll probably move the September and October off and begin to move further forward as we go forward. And just, just so you guys remember, the goal was that we would have this by the end of this fiscal year. Let's go to the next one. Fiscal systems. I want to give Heather and Jane a lot of credit on this, but I think that there are many people within this district office that are working on that. But if you remember, by June 30th as well, GAPS will develop a sustainable budget that is accurate, clear to stakeholders and the public, allows long-range forecasting and planning, and reflects district strategic plan priorities, right? So we want to fund to build, to make the strategic plan happen, and we want to be sustainable. So we got a lot of work to do there. And Jane, you can correct any of these if they're not perfectly accurate. We are working on many things, and what I would love to tell you is that there's one part of this budget where we can completely nail it down, but it doesn't work that way. We are, as soon as we begin to work on something, there's something else that affects it, and so we're having to bring a lot of things together slowly. So, for example, in the September-October category, building admin to be able to check their budget and see it with great clarity. We're not quite there yet. There's still work to be done there to where they can see a live budget, accurate, that is meaningful to them. Procurement card balancing. Jane, do you want to just talk a little bit about where we're at on that?
That is one area that we have, is this on? One area that we have been able to put processes in place. And when I came to the district, we were 6 months behind, and now we are working just in the previous month. So I'm thankful for my staff that have worked hard to learn that process and willing to change.
Enrollment projection. We do know what our enrollment is right now. We are still kind of thinking about what the projection that you got last year that the budget was based on. You'll recall that there was a projection, I think, for about 100 more students. And so the projection has not come to fruition, and so we're going to have to factor that in to look at 23, 24 student population, because we're going to have to take probably a conservative number there, because we're just not seeing that. We are, of course, I think we're going to see population increase in the long run, but we don't see it yet. Comparing our employees to other districts, we are still in the process in the classified. We have a fairly good piece of work now. We kind of know where our certified staff is in the comparisons. And we are using the same districts there. Some of the classified challenges are, for example, in busing, we compare to many districts that are not, they don't run their own. So we have kind of a weird apples to oranges comparison with a private company. There are some wages in this town that we will take into consideration as well, and we will work on those. One of the big challenges is, I think Heather has looked at 2 different districts, and they have about 45 classifications.
So one of the challenge with classified, and both Helen, the president of GAACE, and I have talked about, is you have some positions that a secretary, you've got secretaries, you've got food service, you've got some maintenance. But when you get into the instructional realm or some other positions, not all districts call those positions the same thing. So it takes a little bit of diving in to say, yes, we agree, this position, what it is called, is similar to our positions here. We have 77 classified different positions that we've identified for the specific, the specific things that they do, where other districts might have 40 to 50 positions. And so it just takes a little more time versus teacher salaries, first year, what type of degree, how many credits do you have is a lot easier for comparison, but we're working on it. And we have some specific areas, targeted positions that we really want to take a look at, because we won't be able to compare every single one. Not all districts have the same ones. We're coming there.
So, and you can see several that are complete below there. Non-salary expenditures projected, that would just be off of enrollment to each building. Those are like your copy costs, those sort of things. And then, of course, update that current year fiscal projection for the budget. And there's still things to clean up there. You look at what we had planned to be in right now. So there's some things that are still having to wrap up. You can see fund and staffing review, ratios of adults to students. We'll work on that. And Pete had mentioned that a little bit ago. Just we're going to see where the students are and then what the formulas generate. ESSER 3 is still in process as well, and there's some things that we have to work through with the state there. Some of those are from ESSER 2 that overspent what we had allocated in ESSER 2, and so they're gonna move to ESSER 3, and we're gonna move through on that. AP processes and deadlines. Currently, we're balancing November 2023. So that's a huge win. We are actually almost in real time, month to month, and Jane will show you this big sheet here a little bit later. So, and then as we get into next month, we'll be able to possibly take a look at what our expenditures are this year and project them against next year's revenue, right? And so then we can begin to build a 1-year plan and then a 2-year plan off of that, which can make us sustainable. Right, that's a huge step in this direction. And I want to give Heather a lot of props for her work, also for her work with the certified bargaining this fall. Her and Nancy Hungerford did a great job along with many administrators. And Jane, of course, for her work in that role as well. But just this stuff, a lot of this is coming into being through Jane's oversight. And so I want to give her a lot of credit on that. So we'll see, December we'll begin budget projections. And then the second part of this goal is the budget process, which will probably have almost twice as many action items as anything we've done to date, right? So for the most part right now, we're finding and then planning. Thank you. And then this is just to develop a set of core customer service values or standards, as well as adopt an annual process for feedback and measurement. Culture of teamwork, customer service is what we're about. We got bogged down here in the last month or so working on the values, but we have a pretty good set of about, I want to say approximately 6 or 7. And I want to give Lisa some credit today. She came up with some stuff from the integrated guidance. They have provided us with, there's banks of questions there, and we're pretty close, I think. And Lisa got the job of turning those values into some questions on a Likert scale, and we'll send that out across departments, and then we'll use those to set goals for the coming year. And so this one is a smaller piece of work than the other two, but I think it's really important, and that we understand how all of us interrelate with each other, and looking forward to that. So that's kind of where we are. Any questions?
So are we getting to talk about this yet? or
No,
is that it?
that's coming at the end.
All right.
Jane, looks like Roger already has it marked up.
So we violated the first rule of the teacher, right? We should have handed that out only when it was her turn, because
Andy, is that?
That's it.
You're done,
Yep,
okay.
thank you.
Back to board member reports. Anyone else? Nothing?
I did.
Okay, sorry, go ahead, Eric.
So we met with Sodexo and
Yes.
some of the senior staff, and it went really well. We talked about opportunities. Second Chance Breakfast came up, bringing that back as an opportunity for revenue stream and to make sure kiddos are fed. We talked about quality quite a bit, and it's a catch-22 because they bid very low, so they win the state contract. But because we bid very low, we get, as we called it, the bronze category of food. If you did gold, silver, and bronze, we end up with bronze because they bid so low to win the contract. So it's a tough situation, but we're working together with them to see what we can improve for this year and possibly coming future years.
Okay, thank you.
And last thing, I'm going to be meeting with OSBA Executive Director Jim Green on Monday.
Okay, sounds good. I'd like to kind of come back around to clear outs. I've gotten multiple emails about clear outs. And basically what that is when a child's kind of lost it and they clear the whole room and that child's in there. Obviously, we want to keep the kids safe and we want to keep all the other students safe. But also it's true that at some point we reach the point where if that's happening too frequently, maybe we need to find a different spot for that child who's causing that disturbance. That's just a reality, you know. So, student board reports. Who's up first? I know you guys flipped a coin the first time, so all right, you're up.
I have no preference either way. All right. Over at South Albany, we just had our parent-teacher conferences. We have a decent attendance, and it's the first time we've had in-person conferences since my freshman year into 2019 to 2020 school year. Several students are appreciative, but a bit confused by the several four-day weekends in November. Then coming up in December, we have a blood drive on December 7th, which I happen to be running. And we also have our winter formal that Saturday, December 10th, that I also happen to be DJing. Theater just had the Mousetrap play over this weekend. I think they had fairly decent attendance, not sure entirely on that. And then fall sports are wrapping up. Football plays second in districts, volleyball plays fourth in districts, and cross country first in district, sixth in state, and they just got first at the Pacific Northwest Regionals. Winter sports are starting up as well. We have swim, basketball, and wrestling, all looking forward to a great season, hoping to continue the good record we had from our fall sports season. The Avid seniors went to Chemeketa today. I myself went as well. For our clubs, Key Club is playing bell ringing with Salvation Army, and they're also putting together gobblegrams for Thanksgiving, which are similar to vallograms, which they just write happy messages and deliver them to students. FCCLA is setting up community volunteering with local organizations. They just volunteered at Furniture Share last Friday and are planning to continue volunteering at Furniture Share and other organizations around Albany. Our METRA program, they're having a winter celebration, same day as the SAT coming up at South Albany, but in the afternoon actually, which is December 3rd. And they're planning to have a live band with food being sold, with attendance being free, but also just like get together and raise some money for their club a little. The Activism Environmentalist Club, SIA, is working with admin in the district on an anti-racism project of just like educating people about proper vocabulary, things you can't say, stuff like that. And they're also getting dirts and plants together for the garden beds that they started working on last year and are planning a planting for December 17th. For Student Council, we're continuing to have meetings with club representatives, and we're planning to have some winter sports captains on the next one as well. And our freshman class officers have now been elected, so we're planning to have them as well in our next Student Council meeting. And then that's the gist of it for us.
Awesome. So West also had parent-teacher conferences last week, both in-person and virtual. Basketball tryouts for both boys and girls have been happening last week. League games start mid-December, and non-league the games are first, and they start next week. Wrestling, their first match was going to happen next week, November 30th, hosted by Lebanon. There will be several matches that West hosts in late December, and wrestling goes into January. The Winter Talent Show audition sign-up, I believe, ended today, and auditions will be next week. The talent show is going to be Friday, December 16th, right before winter break, and is totally worth seeing. Right now, West is having a Thanksgiving food drive, which I believe is a class competition. So each class has a table in the front lobby, and basically each class competes to see which class can collect and donate the most non-perishable foods for families over Thanksgiving break. The Environmental Club, I believe, had a Saturday park cleanup. Model UN had a Crisis Con, which is an online conference where groups of students across Oregon represented different countries and worked through global problems and scenarios. The PSAT scores come out in the next few days. Also, a couple weeks ago, we had The Play That Goes Wrong, and it was, from what I heard, was really funny. And most recently, there was a total of 5 students from West and South that joined June Morris on a cultural exchange trip to Japan and Korea. It was through the Oleander Initiative, which is organized by Ray Matsuyama. It was a 10-day trip where students stayed with host families in Japan and Korea. Huge shout out to June Morris and Ray Matsuyama for organizing the whole thing. They're incredible people, and it was a spectacular experience. So that's all.
Okay, hey, thank you very much for sharing.
Follow-up?
Go ahead.
I must. Well, the South Albany football team finished second in league. They also finished first. There was a 3-way tie. They were conference co-champions, and got to see a lot of those games. Followed them to Bend, and while it was cold, proud of those kids. They played to the last play. Very well done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, committee, community, and school presentations. First is a school report, North Albany Middle School. Our Assistant Superintendent, Lisa Harlan, Mr. Stafford Boyd, and Stephanie Seals.
Yep, so we'll just have Principal Stephanie Seals, principal of North Albany Middle School, do her school presentation.
Welcome.
Thank you. I don't know if I can remember how to do Zoom. I'm sorry. Which one do I choose?
While we're waiting on that, I want to give people that are driving around in town and seeing things, you might notice over by the Y, they're doing a lot of building. I think they're supposed to have at least one of their turf fields down by before Christmas. So that's pretty exciting. I think they're that kind of resource here in the area will be really good for our kids. So good job, Y, Chris Reese. You ready? Go ahead.
I think I am.
All right.
Thanks for letting me come to speak with you about the great things we're doing at North Albany Middle School. Some facts about us. We have 31 licensed staff. We have 2 school counselors. We wish that we had 10. We have a structure support classroom, which is our behavior program. There's about 14. I think we received our 15th child today. We have the bilingual education program. We share that with Calapooya Middle School. There's about 75 students in that program. There are 527 students at our school as of Thursday last week. 15% of our students receive English language development classes. 11% of our students receive services through special programs. 20% of our students are Hispanic Latino, 7% are multiracial, and 70% of our students are white. Oops, did I skip a? No. Points of pride. So we've been working on a reset room. A reset room is, some people know that as a refocus room. So when students are struggling for whatever reasons throughout the school day, they may have anxiety, maybe anxious about school, maybe something happened at home that they're bringing to school with them because you can't just shut that off. Or maybe they're having problems with their friends, which often happens in middle school. They can go take a break in the reset room, refocus themselves, get grounded, and then go back to class. I also have a fairly active Tiger Parents Club. And we used to have what we called the Tiger Den, and that was on top of the stage. And students that didn't want to go to recess outside and didn't want to go to the library for recess, had a different space to go, and it was just a unique set of students that really wanted to utilize that. We changed the way we do lunches this year, so we are not able to use the stage. So I talked to the Tiger parents, and we're gonna have the Cub Den now. So there's a little, there's a little room behind our library, and they just started, and they're almost finished painting the little room. It was like colors from like the 1970s, that olive green and that mustard yellow combined with an orange board. So it was yucky, it wasn't very inviting. So now we have a space for kids to go, and parents will come in and operate that when they can, and we can offer that to probably about 10 to 12 students, I hope, and we would go on a rotational basis, and that would be Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday that we would be able to utilize that space. So we're pretty proud of that. Our leadership class is pretty snazzy. They do a lot of community service. One of the things that they just recently did is they donated about $575 for breast cancer to an organization here in Albany. I believe it was through the Samaritan. We had Southpaws donate. We had the Barn donate to that. And then we have some other community relationships that we're proud of. Extreme Graphics donated some wall art. So we have some really positive sayings on the wall, and then we have a big giant Avid sign. And if you've ever been into our school, you know that we needed that because they were big giant white walls with nothing on them. What else do I want to say? Little Caesars donates 10 pizzas to us every month. So students can buy a pizza lunch where they get an Izzy, it's like a healthy soda, and 2 slices of pizza, and they buy those with tiger eyes. So whenever students are doing something positive, something that goes with our character traits that we're working on in our school, they get a tiger eye, and they put their little name on it, and they can save them up, or they can purchase something at the school store right away. They love those pizza lunches. And then my counseling team, Debbie Fifield and Amanda Peterson, are absolutely stellar, stunning, wonderful, hard workers, exhausted, and they help kids every single day. And they never stop. And then our annual fall musical, this is a tradition that NAMS has. Previously, we were doing the musical on our stage in our cafeteria, but now that we have West High, we get to do that, and the kids feel pretty snazzy. They feel like they're in a Broadway production, and it actually feels like going to a Broadway production. They are really pretty good, and the teacher, Leanne Wind, works really hard with some community folks to train up the kids. They do choreography lessons, they do singing lessons, and they spend a lot of time after school on that. So if you ever get the chance next year, please go to the NAMS Fall Musical. So, current challenges. I would say that our number one challenge at NAMS is mental health, making sure that students are in a good place to learn, and often that's not the case. Unfortunately, we have suicide ideation protocols probably have doubled since last year and the year before that. Those suicide protocols take 3 to 4 hours, and we've had as many as 5 in a week. And so that sucks all the time from our counselors, and we want them to spend that time with those particular students and those families. And there are also 527 students in our schools. We have a lack of resources in the Albany community, actually in the region, to support students in mental health when they need help. There's currently about a 5 to 8 month waiting list just to get in to see a therapist for students who are really struggling with whatever it is that they're struggling with. Another challenge is behavior. It's bigger and it's bolder. The big actions match the big statements. And so that's directly connected with some of the suicide ideation that we have going on. It impacts other students when there's those big statements and those big actions to match each other, and it becomes a cycle that's connected to the mental health piece. The other piece that I've been frustrated with and working towards is the transportation piece. The students that do not live in North Albany do not have the same opportunities that students have that live on the other side of the river. Did I just mess that up? So the students in North Albany have more opportunity than the students that live on this side of the river. An example would be athletics. So our athletics are right after school. And if you don't have a way to get home at 4 o'clock, then you're not doing athletics. There's not an activity bus. Parents are still working till 6 o'clock probably. School dances. So our first dance will be in January. We are now going to have our school dance from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And kids, you know, they'll like it, but they want to have a dance in the dark. You know, they drive up to the school. They just do. The homework club, we offer that every Wednesday. We have early release, so from 1:45 to 3 o'clock, we have staff that are there to support students with their homework. They provide a safe space for kids, a quiet space, and whatever it is that kids need during that time, they can get, unless you live on this side of the river, because they need transportation home. And the fifth grade band. So North Albany Elementary is right next door to us. So we have a lot of students from there that come to NAMS to have band class first period. If you are in Oak Grove, you may not be coming because you don't have a way to get to school after band class because your parents are probably on their way to work and they just can't swing it. And of course, we want other students. South Shore is what we would want. We see that our South Shore students don't get to participate in band as often as the other ones that are from that side of the river. Mr. Gardner.
Just a question about the mental health, the suicide ideation. How do you typically become aware of that in the school?
There's a lot of different ways. So one of the big ways is they have an appointment perhaps with the counselor to change their schedule that they don't like or whatever. And then as they start having that conversation, that comes up. Or a mom or a dad will call. Or we have what we call I Have a Problem sheets. It's also digital on our website. And students, so friends of those students will oftentimes tell us, hey, I need you to talk to this student. They're talking about killing themselves, or they're cutting themselves, doing some self-harm things, but don't tell them that I told you. So that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Our approach to instruction and learning is pretty simple. It's pretty standard. So on the left-hand column, the umbrella represents what the teachers will do. So they're going to plan heavy and teach light. We are doing before, during, and after this school year for everything that we teach and do. We should be prepping the kids before, and in the middle, we should be making sure that they understand, and at the end, we need to make sure that they did understand everything, and that could be through a conversation or through a writing or a video or whatever. Behavior, systems. We're working strongly on our systems. One of the things that we do, like every other school, is champs. So those are posted everywhere. When you do not have systems that are consistent, then you see your behavior go up. Teachers need to know what to do and how to respond. Kids need to know, if I do this, then this will happen, kind of thing. And then attendance, we're following the district's attendance plan. The letters are getting sent every 20 days, and we've gotten a lot of feedback about that. There's some parents that are kind of anxious about it, and that's okay. That's okay. The students, so they're going to do, we're going to activate their prior knowledge before we do anything that we're teaching them so that they can connect it to something. And in the middle, we're going to make sure that they understand, and we can do that simply by asking questions. And then after reading strategies, we're going to confirm that they understand, or if they made predictions, then we're going to, yay, good for you, kind of thing. Oh, I forgot. On the left-hand side is our bookmark that all of our staff members have. So we are one team with one vision. When I got there, we weren't necessarily a one team with one vision. So what we're really focusing in on, another thing, are positive relationships with students. We know that if there's a positive adult in a child's life, then they have a better chance of succeeding in school. And then challenging coursework. We always want to challenge them. We want to make sure the rigor is where it's supposed to be, and yet we also want to meet the students where they are as well and help bring them up. And then multiple opportunities to succeed. We always give them a lot of chances to prove to us that they know what they have learned. So it's not about completing the work. It's about showing us that you have learned it. And that all makes an impact on school culture that is hopefully positive. So our goals this school year are in literacy, behavior, and attendance. And the dinosaur is up there because we decided we are going to be fierce, strategic, and relentless with quality instruction. And we also are really working on those positive relationships. We know that we can't make any of that happen without positive relationships. My teachers are tired, but they are fierce and they're strategic and they're relentless and they're never gonna stop. A few quotes from our students. I don't have awesome ones, but I love NAMS and know that my teachers care about me because they talk to me in the hallways. So that's the positive relationship. So I was like, yay, I'm glad that a student said that. I like our school store because I can buy fidgets with my tiger eyes. It should be open more than 2 days a week though. When I need help, I know that my teachers will help me even if I am disruptive. Again, that speaks to the positive relationships and never giving up, fierce, relentless. And then the last one is, I like the pizza lunches that we can buy with our tiger eyes. Little Caesars is much better than the school pizza. So that is what I have for you. Does anybody have any questions?
Roger, go
I
ahead.
don't mean to wreck your timeline here, but yeah, I do have some. I successfully attended and completed junior high at the time at North Albany middle school. It was, yeah.
Junior high at that
Junior
time.
high. It was 50 years ago here.
Play junior high.
We had a board meeting, I think, last year. It had to be last year. And I'm just very impressed with the facilities that the community has taken great care over that 50-year period. In my mind, they looked as good last year as they did when I attended school there. And, you know, that doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't happen by chance. We talked earlier about custodial staffing and cleaning and just in general, I'll say that the district and this community have done a great job taking care of our facilities over time. It looks great. What percent, do you know about what percent of the students are on what side of the river?
No.
Okay.
I could find that for you if you want it.
No,
And
well,
is that,
I think that when we get to get all students what they need, that could become important. And one of the reasons is the state, it's been a couple of years now, I guess, created a transit payroll tax. And so local governments have doubled or tripled the transit money we did just a short time ago. So, and I don't know at what level the district has engaged them before I got here, but that's something we really should do because they're sending buses out on a schedule just to send them sometimes, too many times unfortunately, empty. And it seems like folks should be able to get creative and utilize those tax dollars that are not dedicated to the district to help provide that service. So when it comes to sports or after-school activities, that's mostly no longer done by the school, right? If it's done by Pop Warner or
Yes.
whatever the Little League Association is, or
so recently, I believe last year or the year before, we started, it was before my time, but each of the middle schools are getting, I think it's $50,000 to start putting sports back in the middle schools. So it has made their programs a little bit more defined and have a little bit more money to put towards the kids. Hopefully you're seeing that, you know, but that is a change that has happened, I think, a year or two ago.
You do have a track program, correct?
We have cross-country and track. So last year, we bought a lot of supplies for track. And they're expensive. A brand-new high jump pit is one of the things we did with that money.
So, and it's been 50 years, but as I remember it, we had the kids from South Shore came even back then. But then when those South Shore kids came, they went into high school at South Albany. And so I don't want to get into redrawing boundaries or certainly all of that tonight, maybe never. But is that good? Is that what those kids want to do? And it, because I remember 50 years ago, it seemed like a bit of a challenge. They were at South Shore, they then integrated, and then they left. I have some good friends that I made in junior high who then went to high school elsewhere, still to this day. But I would think that's less than ideal. I don't know, maybe it's good. And it didn't hurt the kids I grew up with or us. It was just different. So you have thoughts about that?
I do. It's great for our school.
Okay.
So just based on the demographics that I showed you at first, 70% of our student body population is white and English speaking only, probably. Probably a higher percent of English speaking only. So when you have students that are bilingual or some are even multilingual, they speak multiple languages at home, it helps make us better. And it helps us understand or start to understand what really is out there in the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Does Tiger Tales still exist?
Tiger Tales?
Eyes.
Tiger Tales was the monthly newspaper that the journalism class put it out.
No, we
I've
don't
got
have
10
that
years
still.
worth. I'll send them to you.
We'd love to see them.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Anyone else? Michael?
Yeah, you know, we're going to talk about this later about Student Investment Act money. We eliminated the fees to participate in extracurricular at the middle school and high school. And I was just wondering, and I think that includes not just sport, I don't know what else that includes at the middle school level, but did you see an increase?
In the athletics or other?
Yeah, athletics, or did that have an effect, I guess is what I'm saying.
You know, it's hard to gauge that, Mr.
Yeah.
Thompson, because of COVID-19. So when you think about 2019, 2020,
It may be a little earlier to ask that question.
yeah, ask me next year.
Yeah, that's fair, that's fair.
Had a question.
That's all.
Go ahead.
We've had a lot of discussions on mental health and behavior in the classrooms. It seems to be a huge topic at every school. Is there anything that you could, request of us that we could help with that would make this situation better? Because we're all aware. And I know we're certainly open to doing what we can do to help you. So it maybe not this moment, but maybe later. I just want to let you know that we are sensitive to this issue. And I think as a board, we'd like to respond to that issue if there's things we can do.
I have thought about this a lot, actually. The biggest thing that I would want, which I don't think you're going to have control over, are more therapists that work with students of our age. There are a lot of, well, that's not actually true. We just have a shortage of therapists. And what I would like, my biggest dream is to have 1 or 2, maybe 3 therapists at my school full-time, and I would want that for every other school as well. And they would be hired by the district, paid by the district, which I know we can't do, but that would be my heart's desire. The other thing is training for my staff. I'm not an expert, and I need experts to come and help with that. I do the mom thing when somebody's in crisis, and often that works, but not all the time.
Thank you for the report. I really liked hearing about that we're watching attendance. I mean, we need them here at school to
Yeah.
catch them up and hopefully bring them back to normal. The behavior issues are something that are always high on my list of things to watch, and I hope you have the tools to correct the behaviors in a productive way for both the students and the staff. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, a consent agenda. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to approve personnel license as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any dissents? Okay, before we go on to the next one, Heather, just a question for you, and it's more how I read it. So I look at this, and they're starred if they, so we have 20, I guess, new, includes 16 new hires, okay. And so the 4 that have stars actually left a position and came to a new one?
Correct. We are continuing to make sure we're getting details to you about
I appreciate that.
all the things that are happening, Pete. And so in the past, we've been just identifying new hires. We knew internally those hires, they went through a process, weren't necessarily new to the district, but new to a new position. So this is a change we've made to help identify. It's a move within the district.
That's awesome.
as well.
So the positions they left, would those show up as
Then-
loss? Or, I mean, them moving out of
No,
those positions?
then they're not shown as a loss. The positions are there. They're being posted and being hired for. So there's always within the numbers. It's how do you make the numbers
Right.
add up? You would have to have many, many rows to just show all of that, but you know within it, we had 4 individuals move. That doesn't mean they've necessarily even started the position yet, but that's in process of where we're going. So you'll have at least those 4, we would hope, by the next time that they've been hired for.
Great, yeah. Go ahead, Roger.
Question, so, can't wait to talk about my one little piece of paper here with all the numbers on it. But, and I'm gonna work it into this. Do you know what percent of the listed positions we have are vacant?
Not off the top of my head. I
Okay.
didn't look at that prior to tonight.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for the answer to that, and thank you for a little bit more fidelity. That's very helpful for those of us looking at the numbers. Do I hear a motion for classified?
I move to approve personnel classified as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor? Any dissents? Okay, next, do I hear a motion to accept the regular board meeting?
I move
Notes.
to approve minutes from 10/24/22 regular board meeting as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any dissents? Okay, on to old business. I don't see we have any. Next is state reports and the state district report card, academic report. I believe that's Lisa? Is that right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Chair Morris, members of the board, I present to you some information about the district report cards that come out from the state, school and district report cards, every fall. These were released publicly with information about how our students are doing in comparison to students around the state and certainly longitudinally. So let's take a journey. So what you'll see is the at a glance for the district report card, Greater Albany Public Schools. It will give you some demographic information on the left, and then it measures key parts of our system. You'll see K2 regular attenders. Ours is 61%, and then you'll see the Oregon average, and you'll see that actually for all of these indicators, these key indicators. You'll see grade 3 English language arts, 8th grade math, 9th grade on track, and on-time graduation grade 12, that is 4-year graduation rate. The backside of our district report card basically takes those same indicators and disaggregates the data by student group and by race for school districts to be able to say, how is it that different groups are doing in comparison to their peers, which you can see on the front side. So a few things that are concerns. One, it looks like for regular attenders, a reminder that that is 10 or fewer missed days a year is a regular attender. The alternate term that you'll hear is chronic absenteeism, and that is 10 or more days a year. That was for K2. The reason that's a key indicator is because that's an indicator of their attendance throughout their K-12 career. You'll get more information actually on these slides that show you some key indicators about attendance across grades. You'll see that our 9th grade on track, our on-time graduation, our grade 3 English language arts, and our grade 8 math were all below the state average, some barely and some more significantly. The most significant discrepancy was on grade 9 on track. Now, if you take the district report card, each school also gets an at-a-glance report card. So in this board report, I gave you an example of an elementary school and an example of a high school because the data that's reported will be slightly different. Again, it will give you demographic information. It will give you key indicators. This one also includes class size, again, regular attenders, and then our tested subject areas, which are English, language arts, math, and science. A reminder that at elementary school, those are on only grades 3, 4, and 5 for our tested areas. It will include the school goals at the bottom and some other information that's written by the principal. Their backside as well will also have that same data disaggregated by student group. It also includes teacher information by school, and that includes teacher retention rates for that specific school and the percentage of teachers that are 3 years or more. So educators that have less than 3 years, we call early career educators. It will give you that percentage. For a high school, it looks slightly different in the data, again, that's reported. Here you'll have on track to graduate. That's at the end of the 9th grade year. On-time graduation, we spoke about that in terms of 4-year graduation rates. You'll also have a 5-year completer or 5-year completion rate. That includes in 5 years the number of students that have earned either a diploma, a modified diploma, an extended diploma, or a GED in 5 years. And then it also includes college going rate. Again, information on the back that's disaggregated by student group. Anything that is unavailable, you'll see if there are fewer than 10 students represented, that data is unavailable because students are identifiable. Each of these report cards exists for any district in the state that's available on the ODE website and any school in the state. So you could compare school to school if you wanted. Now, one of the questions that the board has asked before in the past, there is a link, and that's actually available to anybody, but it's in your board packet. It's a live link, and that's the Oregon School Data Dashboard. So you can get on and compare longitudinal data for our district and or any district. So I want to just give you an example of what that might look like so that you can explore a little bit more on your own. But I'm going to choose Greater Albany Public Schools. And along this left side are all of the things that you can decide that you want to explore a little more. So for example, it is enrollment and demographics. So it'll show you over the last I think it's 2018-19, how our enrollment and demographics have changed. But it will go from everything for our attendance rates over the last several years by grade and what that's looked like, our English language arts by grade, longitudinally and by cohort. This goes all the way back to 2015-16 to be able to say, okay, which grades have dropped more significantly than others in the most recent past, and what supports do we need? So here, one of the things that we see that has been true across the board kind of for us, the rates at elementary school in terms of the difference between 2018 and 21-22 in achievement for English language arts have not been nearly as drastic as they have been in grades 8 and grades 11. So what does that look like, and we as a system, how are we responding? The same thing is true you can explore for math. Again, you see rates drop for the proficiency in 3rd grade, proficiency in 4th grade, but it doesn't drop as significantly as it does perhaps in other grades, in 8th grade, in 11th grade. It'll give you also the 9th grade on track longitudinally across the years to say, okay, historically, how have we done and what does it look like recently comparatively? It will also disaggregate this data by student group. So for example, you can see that in the 18-19 school year, 79.3% of our high school students in the 9th grade were on track, as compared to the 2021 where it dropped to 66.9 for 9th graders and 73.7% for the 21-22 school year. It will give you by school across time and then again by group. It also has the 4-year graduation, the 5-year completer, career technical, and some accelerated learning. The school culture and climate, it doesn't have data that's longitudinal, that's very interesting and easy visually to look at, but it does have a link to the student health survey and the report for how our own students are responding to their school culture and climate and how they feel about school. So I would encourage you to check that out. There's a lot of data there and a lot of data from a lot of years to be able to tell you what the overall health of the system is and to tell us as a district where places in the system need to respond differently and have more supports. A great example would be in summer school and transition programs. When I see that the transition years are the ones that have the bigger drop, then it makes me think, what are we doing in those 6th grade transition years before kids get to middle school? What are we doing in those transition years 8th to 9th to be able to support students in that transition? Our attendance, our regular attenders data, I wanted to call special attention to. This is by grade, and it's for last year, the 21-22 school year, as compared to the state average. Again, a regular attender, you're missing 10 or fewer days, so that's about 1 day a month. One of the things that we have a concern about is that the trend that we've seen happening this year already, when we take attendance data and disaggregate it by grade, is already following the pattern and trend that we saw last year, and it's a concern. So for instance, for us in the 2nd grade, we had about a regular attenders data, about 66.7% of our 2nd graders attended school regularly, meaning they missed fewer than 10 days of school. And that's compared to the state average, which is almost 80%. So it becomes a concern when the systems that you need to have be really agile have to be focused on catching kids up when the attendance rates are as concerning as they are. Our lowest ones for last year were in kindergarten at 56%, and at 11th and 12th grade, which were 56 and 55. So that's really interesting. That is a trend that is typical across the state in terms of the bookends of K-12, but the rate at which they're low, 15 to 20% below the state average, is not typical. And then my question would be, what do we need to do? And what does that look like moving forward? So one of the things that we need to be able to do is better align instruction. To be able to tell where you need to intervene, you have to have a relative confidence about what students were supposed to master in the previous grades. So aligning that across grade levels and across schools will be really important to know exactly where to intervene. Providing targeted interventions to skill gaps, so not waiting until the end of the year to understand or know that a student is behind grade level, and to intervene early is really critical to make sure that those gaps don't grow. And really providing targeted supports to our underserved students. How this translates into the priorities that we have as a district are implementing MTSS systems deeply, and that's K-12. Elementary has had a head start on the rest of the system. They've been engaged in this work longer, and so middle school is engaged in working on that now, but we won't get to where we need to in monitoring and supporting student intervention unless that system is well-oiled and implemented. Implementing a common set of proven instructional strategies and standards of practice, again, across settings and across grade levels will be really key. A great example of that is when you teach students strategies in the elementary level and those middle school teachers are using the same strategies, they already know them. They already know what it looks like to do this high leverage strategy because they've been doing it for a while. So the time it takes teachers at the beginning of the year to teach the routines and structures, we don't have to spend as much time doing that because students already know what that looks like and what's expected of them. And then really have some deep engagement for professional development for teachers in the new curriculums. The K-8 are implementing new English language arts curriculum, which has been phenomenal in that it tackles early literacy foundational skills much better and earlier than our previous curriculum, and we'll have new math curriculum for next year as well. I believe I am now available for questions.
Roger, go ahead.
Thank you. Very good. Lots of information, very informative. I don't think I have a grasp or a complete understanding of, of all of that data, but it's now been 20 months since we reopened from COVID. Are things moving in the right direction? Is there a specific set of numbers that indicate to you that they are or they're not? Tell me about that.
That's a great question. So we have a district data routine where we take all of the universal screening data that we get in the fall to ask that question. What does the overall system look like? What's the overall health of the system? Where do we feel like it's moving in the right direction, and where do we need some course correction? I still have, we just did that routine with a team of people in the district last week. I have some deep concerns about high school on track for our 9th and 10th graders. And I think a lot of times we assume it's 9th grade, but for one of our schools, it's actually 10th grade. But I have deep concern about the levels that is 9 through 12. We spend a lot of time and energy in the system in the 12th grade getting kids to where they need to graduate, and that we should do. But we would need to spend less time and energy if we did some things kind of beforehand. So I have deep concern about the percentage of students who are on track to graduate in high school. And I have concern about the lost time and momentum that I see that happens when kids are transitioning, and I see it in both English, language arts, and math. So those transition years, 5th to 6th, 8th to 9th, I have concern about how that happens and the setback that students have in starting where they left off to continue to gain skill. So if you are a student who's behind grade level in reading, and when you get to middle schools, our system should give you enough data to know exactly the intervention that you left off, that you can start that intervention as soon as school starts. You don't need to wait for a universal screener to do it. Same with high school. High school should know, here's the data for 8th grade reading, here are the 9th graders that are gonna need intervention, and here's the intervention to build your skill without waiting to see how that looks and how you do on that fall assessment. And so those pieces of the system need some work.
Okay. What was the time frame measured? Was this last year, and we're getting this now?
Yep. So
And
state school report cards are all of the SBAC assessment data that came out in the summer of the previous school year, after the previous school year. Yeah, and the graduation rate isn't, it's January. So the graduation rate, you'll see it's 1 year, it's 1 year less data because we don't get that kind of certified from the state until January. So in January, I'll be able to tell you like our graduation rates from last year, but there is a delay.
So the Oregon, comparing to other schools and other achievements, is apples to apples. I guess it's a fair comparison. However, our kids will be competing on a national and an international level. I continue to read and watch how poorly Oregon continues to rate as you compare it nationally. Thoughts about that? Should we? I mean, we strive to do the best we can.
100%. Oregon has one of the shortest school years in the nation. So when our students are being compared and have to compete, you're exactly right, in a national or global economy, because that's who you're going to be competing with jobs for, our students probably receive about a month's less of instruction a year. It's 20 instructional days. And over the course of your K-12 education, that will probably be about 6 months less of half a year. And so depending on the state that you're comparing to, with one of the shortest school years in the nation, that's what happens. We're comparing our students. We're saying, hey, I need you to learn and master as much as these other students, but by the time they graduate, they got 6 months more of school than you did.
So why do we do that?
That's a great question. It's not one I can answer, but I can tell you at the elementary level in our own system, the difference of 15 minutes 15 minutes a day. Andy goes to school 15 minutes longer than I do. By the time we hit middle school, he will have gone to school 41 more school days than me, and that's 2 months worth of school, right? You multiply that across what that means for individual kids across the system. By the time we both get out of school, he's gotten months and months more of math instruction, months and months more of English language arts instruction. So if you were to ask me, and I'm sure Director Aganaga has heard me say this before, we are forcing our students to do more, faster, and compete in a way when they've literally had less instruction.
Thank you.
Yep.
A lot to think about.
Michael?
No. People are laughing. I will say, we ventured a couple years ago. We ventured the idea of, or some board members took it much farther than a couple days, adding a couple days earlier than the school calendar, adjusting the school calendar. Good luck adjusting it at all. Not to mention significant. So when I say significant, try to add 5 days. We will have a tough time.
The thing I would point out is, so our strategy has been programs, right? Summer programs to try
Yes.
and make up and have some of that time. What we don't remember is that 5 days, you think, oh, what's 5 days a year? 5 days at the end, how much even happens? But it's not 5 days a year. If you're a kindergartner, it's 5 days every single year for 12 years or for 13 years. The cumulative effect that happens for kids, we don't quantify enough and we underestimate, for sure.
So I'd just add a couple of things. Number one, we went through the Great Recession and many school districts responded by balancing their budget by cutting days. And some of them got kind of stuck there. I think Cascade ended up with 12 days off for 2 years in a row or something like that and didn't meet the instructional, there were just a lot of things. And yet their kids scored pretty well regardless. And so then people are like, well, what does that mean if they went 12 days less and they still scored pretty well? The numbers that Lisa shared with you about attendance are pretty stark. We don't do correlative data, but I would guess there's something of a correlation between the kids who are not regularly attending and the kids who show as not moving very far forward. And so we're gonna have to think about how we go right at that.
So one of the things we did in response to this year, research tells us that if in the first 10 days of school you miss 2 days, the odds of you being a regular attender are real low. So we made sure that 10 days in, 20 days in, all of our schools sent out things to say, hey, we're concerned. We know that again at 40 days, the same thing is true. So trying to create systems that send up flags to say, hold on, we're concerned this is happening early, but this will be a true partnership with the community and a true partnership with parents to entrust us with their kids and to get kids at attendance rates that are 85 and 90%.
Yeah, this board has voted 3 times to have the district investigate extending the school year. We got pretty far last year. As a chair, I kept delaying the school calendar on our board meeting because we really tried to investigate extending it longer. That's my plan, is to make K through 5 all the way through 30 June. And if you are a middle school teacher, high school teacher, an SEA, come down to the elementary school and help. Would be greater than 3 SEAs and 3 teachers in one classroom, and provides our classified staff a little more money through the summer and more longer employment. A year ago it was about $4 million to do that, and as the great results we've got from summer school, I really think that K through 5 could benefit on focusing 2 more weeks in school with a heavy focus in reading. Thank you.
Thank you for the data. I would say it just, like we've all said, just makes it that much more important that our kids get to school, and that's obviously goes back to parents, right? Parents getting their kids to school and us following up. And, if you're older like me and back in the day, the truancy officers and things like that, we don't have those anymore, But
I don't know if we ever had them, but I was sure threatened with them a lot when I never saw one, but I wound up at school.
But we definitely need to come up with a way to get our kids to school, and parents, you're a huge portion of that, making it important for your kid to get to school so they can get ahead in life. I look at this kind of as a report card, and I don't like it, right? I mean, every one of these things we look at, we're not on the good, we're on the bad, right? So that's not something that is impressive, unfortunately. But thank you for sharing the data.
So one more.
You're up, Roger.
So I read an article today in the Oregonian, some guys from Stanford and Harvard talking about nationally where we're at, and they kept alluding to an academic recovery plan. Do we have that? We have lots of things we're doing, but in those terms, do we have such a thing?
So we looked at that article, but we didn't even when I went to my old email that had a Oregon Live membership, I could not get it to show me more than 2 paragraphs, so I can't respond to that article. The state does not have a requirement in place, and I think those professors may be talking about something that may occur more broadly. I don't know that Oregon has a specific plan that we have on file to recover.
Well,
I'd be glad to read the article and respond if you send it to me, yeah.
Okay.
Our strategy and response really is that last slide of the presentation, which is what do we need to focus on, and then how do we actually practice that, boots on the ground? What are the things that we need to practice or implement to get those things done?
So absent any other definition or any other formatting, that in fact is our academic recovery plan.
For sure.
Thank you.
I have a
Go ahead.
short question. Are truancy letters like not actually a thing? Or like not real? Or like not real anymore?
I don't think they're happening any longer.
But that was an actual thing.
I never got one to my home, but I
Never got one,
thought
and I
they
tried.
I thought they were, yes,
So-
but that could be just legend.
So I will tell you.
Gentlemen, let's be honest here. We're all friends
did.
here.
I will tell you, one of the things that you heard Principal Seals talk about are the attendance letters that are sent to families and to students to indicate this is where your attendance is and this is what puts you at risk. And sometimes that can produce some anxiety, you heard her say, or with parents. And we call those attendance letters. And we certainly send attendance letters. Schools do, and the district does to say, this is an issue and we really need your help because it's a problem.
Until about 1.5 years ago, we could suspend your driver's license if you stopped coming to school, but not any longer.
We used to be able to fine and do that, and that has gone away.
There used to be more teeth to making sure kids got to school than there is now.
And if I can just add to the conversation, you're talking about an academic recovery plan. And I think that term, it makes sense in terms of we make plans for a lot of things. And as we look at the MTSS systems and just from HR and we look at staffing and what I hear from principals, Principal Stephanie Seals talked about, part of the academic recovery plan is also the mental and physical health and well-being of students. Why aren't students coming to school? And some of them could be just downright health issues that are keeping them from coming, mental health issues, and we won't attack the academic piece if we don't look at all of the supports. And our schools need more supports than they did 50 years ago when we were in school. Things have changed for students these days dramatically, I think, in terms of what the world has going on for them and families. And that's the comprehensive education we're all here working with you guys to figure out for kids these days.
Okay, student transfer data. Ms. Harlan.
Yes, so Chair Morris, members of the boards, in your board packet, you have student transfer data. And if you click on that icon, I'll just kind of walk you through what it is that you're looking at. It's not easy to project because there's a lot of data tables. So if you want to peek on a friend's, that might be helpful. But basically it tells you by grade, what are the number of students who are going out of our district by grade. It's again interesting because you can see patterns and trends across levels. Then it will tell you by school, in district, these are just in district transfers, how many students are transferring in, how many students are transferring out that are within our own district. So what you can see is AOL, for example, there are no transfers out because there isn't a boundary for AOL, right? So you can only transfer in. AOS, it's the same. But all of the other schools, you can see within our own district, we have about 827 students that are attending a school that is not their boundary school. So you have Central, for example, that has 13 students who transfer into Central from within the district and 11 students who transfer out of Central from within the district. It's important to note that some of these schools on any given year and grade level will be closed for transfers because of space. So for example, if you had no more space in your second grade classrooms and you had requests for students to transfer into the second grade, that request would be denied. The last one are schools transfers into our schools from out of district. So these are 114 students who we have transferring into our schools from other districts. So again, from AOL, it says 14. AOL is a tough one because they're not boundaried. And I know that we have many students who have never necessarily been enrolled in a school who choose to go to AOL, but they're still GAP students, so those numbers are a little wonky. But for instance, you can see how many students come to our district schools from out of district. If you scroll down, it gets really, the information gets very discrete, and it will tell you by school and by grade. So the first big chart, again, are in district transfers by school and grade. So for example, I can see that at Central Elementary, they had 4 students transfer into the 3rd grade from another school within the district. On that chart, the cells that are grayed out are gray because that school does not serve those grade levels that are grayed. So for example, Central, you'll see kinder, 1st and 2nd are grayed because they don't have students in those grades. But it will allow you to compare by grade level and by school. The second of those charts is set up in the same way, except it's out of district students. So students who are coming to us from outside of the district, where and in what grade levels are they generally coming? It provides for you, again, a pattern or trend to be able to see what that looks like. These are numbers that were taken for this school year, but obviously we're taking a point in time, and transfers generally continue at the semester especially.
Go ahead, Roger.
So what is the time frame? Is that this school year, or is this a 12-month period?
Nope, it's this school year, and this data was taken at the end of October.
So if I've got this right, I don't think I do. Maybe I do. We've had 827 students transfer into the district and only 114 transfer out of the district, which would tell me we've gained 700 students since the start of the school year, no?
Nope, so we have 827 students who live in the district that attend a school that is not their boundaried school. So I've transferred, maybe my boundary school is Timber Ridge, but I transferred to Calapooya. So we have 827 students within the district who are on an in-district transfer, who are choosing to go to a school on a transfer that was not their boundaried school. Which is quite a high number. I think it's a number that would surprise most people.
It's almost 10%.
The second box are 114 students from outside of the district who come to transfer in.
And do we also have 114 that live in district and transferred out? Where's that number?
I'm trying to think. I thought it was at the bottom. It is more, but only slightly. Let me look. And I thought we had that also by grade and school. If that's not attached, I will send it out to you. Yeah.
So we have slightly more that are leaving the district than came into the district. Okay. and almost, or 827 that are switching within schools within the district.
And then I don't know, are we able to track students that are homeschool, private school, any of those numbers?
So we get numbers for homeschool students that have registered with the ESD. That's the requirement, and not all do, but we have numbers there. We also have numbers of students who maybe have never attended GAPS, but would be within our attendance boundary who attend online charters. You'll remember previously that was capped at 3%. There's still that out there, but we're not near the 3%. And then you could take attendance for, we only have one in district, but there are some that are out of district private school attendance. That's a little harder to get, but certainly we can get
Like
that.
Albany Christian and San Diego
That would
Christian?
be the.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions on this?
Sure. Where's our enrollment today versus where it was a year ago at this time?
We just had that report, I think it was in the last board packet. And if I can remember off the top of my head, it is, our elementary numbers are higher than they were last year and higher than our projected. Our secondary numbers were higher than last year, but slightly lower than we projected. So our enrollment versus our projected enrollment is down, but we're up about 50 students than we were last year.
Thank you.
Lastly, the South number. So 144 students transferred into South from within the district.
I'm scrolling. And that's by grade level, and,
And then 253 South students transferred to West and AOS?
153.
What's the 253 that I'm looking and seeing?
Trying to see where you are.
It's in the third box. Do you have the same?
Oh, I see. I'm not sure, because when I scroll down, I'll have to double check that. I thought you were looking at the big table, because when I scroll down for South Albany, you're right, it says by each grade level, 144 are transferring out, and 153 are transferring into West. So I wonder if it's literally just an error. I think it's a typo. Yeah, so, you know, I appreciate you
sense.
pointing that out, because I think a lot of people think that it's really one way or it's really one-sided, and they're off by 9. And at any given point during the year, they're pretty close. But one of the things that you'll notice are they generally tend to be, in the past, heavier at the 9th grade, but it actually is more even than I would have expected.
It's probably a typo, because the 100 would make a lot more sense.
Yeah. Director Cervantes.
So I'm just curious about the South Shore number. It's an interesting look at students that transfer out. Any comments about how, being that it's our bilingual school, or, and I'm just curious as to see, is that by choice, folks moving out of that school because they don't want them to be bilingual, or?
For South Shore?
Yeah.
Yep, so South Shore is a boundaried school, but it also is a program school. So if you do not want your student to be part of a bilingual education program, you can transfer out. And it used to be in the past that we would have kind of an agreement where these two schools would be the place that you would go. It is not as straightforward as that anymore. Chris, thank you, just whispered in my ear that the report she just added to board book, the report numbers for the transfers out of the district, she just added, she said it was on another page, and she didn't scroll down, so it wasn't originally there. So I think it is there. It should be there now. That shows, can I see that shows the number. So the students transferring out of the district in the request that we've had from the board in the past is how has that compared in previous years. So for 2021, 87 students transferred out of the district. In 21-22, that was last year, 57 transferred out of the district. I think in large part, we kept a lot of students because we had remote instruction model and AOL. And for 2023, so far 71. So actually, we have 114 that are coming to us and 71 leaving. Thank you for adding that.
Okay. Next up, financial report. Jane, you ready? I think Roger had some questions.
I'm going to take you through the report. And the very top line, the first 4 columns shows actuals. So those columns show the actual expenditures and revenue for June, July, August, and September, October. Excuse me, not June, just July through October. November through June are projections based on my best guess at this time with everything that I know. And so the revenue will change when we receive the actual property tax for November and December. Our revenue will change, and it looks like it will come in slightly higher than the budget. And so if you remember, when property taxes are above the budgeted, then you have to offset that and reduce your basic school support through the state. So in January, we will look at our ADM, which will also affect our revenue, our property tax, and then I have a chance to correct with ODE how much basic school support they will pay us for this school year. And we do that to avoid a negative May adjustment. So the May adjustment for last year could affect this. I haven't nailed that down yet, if that's positive or negative, but that will also affect our revenue. And then another large factor in the revenue, we budgeted $11.4 million for our beginning fund balance. And right now I'm guessing 12.5. And that is a safe guess right now. We are still balancing cash and balancing our liability accounts for 21-22. When we finish those 2 tasks, we will be able to complete all of the audit reports. So at this time, I have delayed the audit until January. So we will meet the drop dead deadline of March 31. But I want it to be actual. I want the cash to be balanced and liabilities balanced. So that was our choice. We talked with the auditors and decided that was the best path. So that beginning fund balance will change. I suspect it will increase based on what I see after we have completed the audit. And so the expenditures in the report are the same. July through October are actuals. And then the pink one is salaries, benefits, capital outlay, those types of expenditures. And the salary and benefits, October through June, are based on the encumbrances I see in the system at this time. So I've communicated with all of our admin, our principal, and I'm waiting for them to get back with me to tell me, are those vacancies true? I have assumed that they are. And so that is why the salary and benefits are near 100%. I believe some of them probably are not true, that could go down. And then the blue expenditures are by function. And I add those to the report because by function is how we are appropriated. It's our legal authority to expend. And so I want to monitor that to make sure that we are within appropriation. And so then you get to the bottom number, the total columns, month-end balance. Projected ending fund balance is $15.6 million. That is comprised of the contingency of almost $11 million and the increase in the beginning fund balance, and then just the small reduction in expenditures above the budget. So that all the factors combine to increase our ending fund balance above the 12.5 beginning. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So before you guys have too many questions, just want to emphasize that this is first look here and that we will see adjustments to this because each of these is and she spoke a little bit about the salary line and whether it's encumbered, whether it's actually a real expenditure or not. There are adjustments to be made here, not least of which is the green number on the left, about halfway down. The beginning fund balance could change. and we could be adjusting some of these expenses as we true up, they can move. And so, but this is the concept that we want to operate on. I think Eric had asked for something like this in September or August even. And so just hold that in mind. We could come back as the months go by and say, hey, here's an adjustment that has happened, and we're going to have to true that up.
Looks like we need to start cutting some trees down.
So might I ask?
Roger, go ahead.
a question or two? Thank you. This is great. I like the format. I like receiving these numbers now in the spirit of no surprises as we work through the school year. I think that's great. So the first line, property taxes, you're projecting a big number in November.
That's when we collect them.
Do you get some, don't you get some in February and some in May?
It's a slightly bigger number.
In June, you can see last year we received about 800,000. And
but-
then,
So I guess it's maybe a procedural question, and I'm too far into the weeds here, but people that pay their property taxes in November, they pay them in February, and they pay them in May. Is that a trailing? The county treasurer is paying you your allotment all at once?
the largest portion is received in November and December.
Okay. Investment earnings, we're projected, we're doubling the budget. Is the school district restricted like other public entities I know and what we can invest in? And that's to the extent that investments can be safe, we're as safe as we can
Yes.
legally get in that regard, right?
The majority is in the local government investment pool. And that increase above budget is based upon the actuals that I've seen the first 4 months.
Okay. So the expenditure, line 100 salaries, and the reason I ask about the vacancies is this is a big organization, and normally you would think vacancies are running 3 to 5%. Did we
Still working on that.
did we back into that
So
number
Roger,
during budget?
I have left the vacancies as if they are encumbered until I learn that we won't be filling them. So when I bring this back to you next month, I will have resolved that. So I may be able to reduce the salary and benefits.
Okay, great. Line 700, transfer to other funds of $1.2 million there in June. Where's that money going?
Yeah. Budgeted.
Okay,
I don't remember, but I will find out.
okay.
Is that the intergovernment agreement for
Oh, yes, that's budgeted to go to the bond payment, the debt.
You recall that the number submitted to Lynn County last year did not cover the bond payment, and there was a loan which was going to be repaid. And it changed our tax rate just a little bit.
That is not all of it, though, so I will bring you back that information.
You've got, well, but to that issue, the money should be an inflow to maybe that's the next year, that it will be an inflow to, you're calling it general fund, to the general fund from the bond fund because,
Roger, it was a 2-year payback.
okay, all right, I'll move on. Unappropriated balance of $7,937,120. What's, that would be, it's not beginning balance, right? Because you already included that. What is that number?
Where are you looking?
7,000 under expenditures by function. Unappropriated
Oh,
balances.
yes, that's the contingency. That's what creates the ending fund balance. So if you add the 2.7 and the 7.9, Those are reserves to ensure an ending fund balance. But if we had expenditures arise that we didn't anticipate, the board could pass a resolution to move those into the expenditures. So they aren't expended, they fall out in that 15.5 ending fund balance.
So your projection of 15.6 ending fund balance assumes that we don't use any of that contingency money.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I got. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have anything?
What's our ending fund balance goal? Do we have one?
You have a policy that calls for 8%, I believe, no less than 8%.
8% of total expenditures?
I'm not sure whether
Or
that's general
total-
fund or
total
total
budget?
expenditure.
The total budgeted expenditures.
Jane, thank you. This is great. I think we're moving in the right direction. We need to be in this direction, so that's fantastic.
I also really appreciate the color coding,
Yes.
because we don't often get that sometimes. Sorry, Andy.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Bond business reports. First up is Mr. Bowman and Mr. Sampleton.
Indeed, yep. Thank you, Chair Morris. I believe Skip will go over the end of month report.
Chair Morris, members of the board, we have our October end of month report. We were finishing up transportation, and also starting off South Shore, so both things going on. At transportation, we saw the building electrically energized in October, along with other utilities, and that was enabling commissioning to start. And then also at West Albany High, just a note there, we were able to substantially complete the chiller there. So that was a big part of that project that took a lot of effort. A major milestone for West Albany High. And then at South Shore, we started site work, which in specific terms was excavation, and then continuing on into November. Any questions on the end of month report for October?
I don't see any. Nope.
Okay.
Oh, Roger?
Well, I don't know, format, I have questions. I don't know where to
Okay,
ask them.
go ahead, ask questions.
So have we included an offset for revenue from the sale of the bus barn property in the budgeting of the build-out of the bus barn?
Yeah, that was part of the original memorandum of understanding when it was first presented. So it was transferring some funds from the CET account to cover some of the transportation costs, the sale of the original Marion Street property, and then also the sale of the existing transportation facility. So that's been part of the conceptual budget that would have been presented back a few years ago now.
It is part of the budget.
Where?
That I gave you is only the general fund?
All right, okay. So what's the destiny of that money once it lands?
To go towards the new transportation facility. If we do better than we anticipated, which is what happened on the Marion Street property sale, we received more than we anticipated. We put the balance of that into the transportation facility.
So it's a special fund, Roger, where we're capturing the expenditures. That is where the transfer goes and the sale.
We can give you an update on that fund in the next meeting, like what that looks like.
Well, I just, if there's upside, why does it have to go to transportation? I mean, it's the districts and the taxpayers' asset. Because we've pledged it to do that?
Well, I think that was estimated several years ago, what that income would be, and I don't know what market conditions are against that prediction.
We anticipate we would do better today than we would, back when the initial proposal came through. But I believe that to be accurate. I would certainly defer to Ms. Knopfziger on that, but I believe that if we do better, I don't believe we are contractually obligated to put the entire balance of the sale into the transportation facility. Technically speaking, I believe we'd only need to meet what we proposed. But there are some financial ramifications to putting more towards that building, especially with some of the budget overflow that we've had as well, or the overages that we've had as well. So it could soften the blow in some ways.
So Roger, we will put it as we budgeted. We'll put it in the fund. When the fund is final, the building is complete, the board could by resolution move any remaining funds into the general fund or capital projects fund.
Great.
Did we actually ever put that on paper, or was it conceptual? Because I don't remember it actually being, I remember it being conceptual, but not like the board actually took a vote that we will sell the original bus barn.
So this certainly predates me by a few years, but in compiling information, I believe that it came to the board for the vote due to the price tag, if nothing else, and how that the funds were intended to be
It's been like
generated.
3 years, so.
Right.
Thanks.
So, thank you for that. So, my next question is, where are we on Central Grade School?
So, and Skip and I talked the other day, we are looking at, you guys voted to put $2.8 million of ESSER 3 towards the project. We spent $150,000 developing the plan, which showed $6 million in cost. We have discussed going about finding low-cost solutions for air in the building, and we'll be coming back to you. But right now, we don't have that to bring back to you yet.
So we spent $150,000 to come to the conclusion that it was $6 million, not $2.8 million. There had been work previously to come up with that $2.8 million. How much money did we spend on that?
So the Soderstrom architect report, I don't know what we spent with Soderstrom to come up with that. We can find that number for you. But I don't have that.
Okay? And so then I just, I think the community's frustrated. I think we're frustrated. The cooler the weather gets, the more impactful it is. And just in layman's terms, my immediate and most serious problem is 6 classrooms that have their windows open to meet air requirements, and those classrooms are having air come in that yesterday morning or this morning was pretty darn cold. Somebody's got to explain to me why. Those classrooms, probably a 5-ton unit would take care of a classroom. 5-ton unit is probably today 10 grand. The ductwork for that, I guess that the devil's in the detail, but in a normal project, you would not budget any more than that. So I'm looking at what on its face is a $20,000 to $30,000 item for 6 classrooms in its most immediate state. 3 times 6 is $180,000. And tell me why we can't do that.
I appreciate the math.
We appreciate the math.
Yeah. We have, I was not involved in the feasibility study, but I certainly picked it up during design development. And we are needing to quantify what that ventilation rate is. We are needing to look at an old steam system. So the long-term energy costs of staying with steam, going to hot water was partly what was driving going to hot water on that, and part of the cost as well. In talking to Superintendent Gardner, we are looking at alternatives now, and hope to be able to bring back something that will answer some of those questions.
But I don't need steam. I don't need water. I have this unit outside that will put warm air into the room, take air out of the room, that will meet all the exchange requirements.
We'll look at that.
Can we create some subcommittee of this board that harasses you guys, not harasses you, that stays to task on a weekly basis on where we are with this thing. I don't know what else to do. And I know it must be frustrating for you all as well, trying to make something happen. So I'm looking for a subcommittee of this board, which would be no more than two, that will meet weekly with the principals involved in this to make sure that we're doing our darndest to make something happen at Central Grade School.
Is there someone that would like to do that? Roger, I'm guessing you're one of them.
I'd be interested.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
Have one, or if there's two that can make the time.
I'd be happy to help out. If you want some, I have some construction background and some.
Sure.
Okay.
Without there's no quorum there. I think
Right.
that just the two.
We don't have to, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have to
We
vote on
can't
it.
do three.
Sure. Okay, so that makes a lot of good sense.
Do we want to vote on that or have?
I don't think we need
Do we
to.
need to?
If it's not the
If
quorum.
there's
have
objection,
consensus.
Michael, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and do the updated South Shore Elementary School budget.
Very good. So you have that in your board packet. You'll see numbers there. I'll just walk through them. You'll see just overall, the bottom line, it's about $32,000 in the black, meaning the project, we're projecting the project budget to be lower by $32,000. So I would say in the magnitude order of things, we're running even. I'll tell you how we got there. We started off with the GMP coming in lower, as we saw a couple months ago, at around $500,000. And then the phase one modular moves, we see that coming in lower as well. We also added to the budget as we kind of went through to kind of see where we were at. We did not have modular demolition as part of our project costs, so we added that back in. And then also, when during design, we did remove the casework from the construction project in terms of what the general contractor was going to be providing. So that was part of the savings that we saw on the lower GMP. So we had to back in into the project budget purchase for that casework, which is going directly to a supplier as opposed to through the general contractor. And the reason for that was just the district's been seeing a much better product come from this supplier than what we're seeing spec'd and installed by the general contractor and their subs as well. So that was a $200,000 add there. We see project management increased as well for the project timeline, and there's a separate action that we'll be bringing to the board here later tonight on that, and I can explain why that difference is there. But the bottom line is that there's a longer project time, but I'll provide some more information on that. And then I'm just a couple of others, plan reviews, fees. We saw several months ago that whole conversation, so that was also increasing the project cost. And there's a line item in there for furniture, fixtures, and equipment under miscellaneous. So the project had always been intended to pay for chairs and desks. And then when the project budget was put together, Nays and Waverly, being the sister ESSER project, picked up the funding of that, so we were not carrying anything here in this project, and now the project is paying for it. So if you look at all three ESSER projects, the costs have not changed, but if you look at South Shore alone, it has picked up invoices that have come in against this project. So that's been offsetted in Nays and Waverly as a credit over there. So that kind of tells a story of how we're kind of running even on a project budget, despite the GMP that came in lower a couple months ago. So that's the project update, budget update I want to provide for South Shore. And certainly want to ask if there's any questions.
Any board members have questions or directors? Okay. Let's go on to managing project budgets and contracts.
Very good. I put this together because I realized a couple of meetings ago that we have a room full of very intelligent individuals, but don't live the day in life of design and construction. And so there were some questions about budget management. And so I just want to put this together. You've probably read it by now. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but just the highlights are that managing a construction budget is much different before construction contract and after. So before construction contract, you're in design, you're doing conceptual studies, you're doing permitting, you're doing project approach strategies. All those things can change the budget, and we've seen that in the last couple of years. And then after you're in construction contract under GMP, there's a lot less things that can change the budget. So let me just mention a couple on that paragraph that's called prior to construction contract. In design, there are safeguards that we put into place that help manage surprises for the budget during design. And so we do have several different checkpoints, meaning design phases. Central Elementary School, we went through DD before we went to full design, for instance. And then we also have multiple cost estimates. So we'll have the contractor provide a cost estimate as well as the design firm. And then we compare the two together. So those are the kinds of things that we do to try and manage, minimize surprises during design. And the kinds of things that can come up during there, you'll see number one, during design phase only, construction sequencing, design schedule delays, pushing our bidding window out of optimum time, inflation, and then if a change of how much self-perform work the district's going to do. In addition to that, we can have unforeseen field conditions, owner scope to identify program needs that are not being met during design, unplanned code requirements, and then some value engineering decisions. So all those kinds of things can happen during design that can affect our budget. If we move down to the second page, after construction starts, meaning after we're under contract, we can still have some of these things come in. Unforeseen field conditions, owner scope added, building permit, et cetera. But they are managed by what's the GMP contract will allow. So we're fairly tight on what can come through there, so we don't see the construction budget changing much once we're under contract. A couple of other things that do come in after contract and after design is complete would be design omissions and design errors. And so we are always looking at our final design package to try and minimize that, but that does come through. So just wanted to leave that whole conversation with before GMP contract and after GMP contract. And we should be seeing those cost changes a lot less after GMP contract. Any questions?
So once you get to under construction contract, even drastic, maybe that's the key word, drastic, significant changes in the overall economy don't affect once you get to that point, or you have more room to?
There's no contractual basis for that. It doesn't mean that the contractor cannot come and still request it or press upon it, but
More difficult?
It filters out most, if not all, right? And that's what it's intended to do.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, what gets you is change orders.
Well, okay, but yeah, I get that part, but reading this, it seems to imply that if you're at that level, you finally are at that level, or finally get to that, even inflation doesn't.
Our
They find a different way, or?
yeah, the contract that that GAPS came up with that issues for all GAPS projects requires the general contractor to review the contract with the subcontractor claims that come in. And then once that's done, then it goes to the architect and do the same scrub over again. And then when they're done with that, we do the same scrub as well before it comes to the district for a request for approval. So there's a fairly robust process.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions by anyone? Okay, let's go to South Shore Elementary casework contract.
Okay. So we saw that $200,000 budget line item in South Shore. This is $158,000 coming out of that budget line item. and it's a request to purchase casework for that project to Oregon Corrections Enterprise.
By casework, you're meaning like window casement and trim?
Built-in casework would be drawers, shelving, cabinets, and so
Okay,
forth.
all right.
And that has been a district standard in the last couple of years, is that company, they know
Yeah.
our design. So it's pretty universal.
That's
Yeah.
correct. The intent of the presentation and the request for approval here is due to the value of it. It's over $150,000, which requires board approval.
Questions, concerns from anyone?
You ready for a motion?
I am ready for a motion.
I move to approve the contract as presented.
Second?
All in favor? Oh, go ahead.
What's this do, what's this do to our overall budget for these projects and the fund? And to be clear, this is inside the budget
It's
for this
inside the
project?
budget.
Exactly, yes.
So it does nothing to those?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any dissents? Okay. Let's go on to M5, extended HMK fee schedule amendment for South Shore Elementary.
Okay, thank you. So this is amending the HMK project management fee. If you go down to the second page, you'll see the items added in red that show the hours for the additional fees. Originally, when the project was conceived and project management fees were proposed, the plan had been to provide a modular classroom building and to finish that end of the summer. And so you'll see that the September, October, last 2 months are covering a completion in August. It doesn't say it's completing in August, but typically we'll run a couple months past completion to close the project out. And so that's where the fees are starting up. There were 2 changes that happened since then. One of them was that the modular building could not be completed by the end of August. It was going to be January or February. And so that was a new timeline that we did not update the project management fees at that time. And then when we saw that there were going to be savings to go to a site-built classroom building as opposed to modular, then that pushed the completion date out to May. And so that's what this fee change is based on, is going from August to May. And that's what the fees are based on.
And to add to that, that was part of the comprehensive review on the overall cost savings and quality of the asset and going to a stick-build structure versus modulars. All of these were considered when looking at the most cost-effective and highest value option.
So this cost had already been figured in?
It was part of the comprehensive view.
Any questions from any?
Well, just as a matter of principle, and I don't know what we're contractually obligated to do here, and I think it's important we do what we say we're going to do. So having said that, I think we're creating a situation where a naysayer would say the longer it takes to get a project done, the more money they make. And that doesn't, I don't like that. The incentives ought to be the other way. We ought to pay more money the faster we get them done. So if we're under contract to do this, we need to vote to do it. If we're not, we better vote anyway.
And I would suggest that under the change of scope, that's effectively what we put into place, is that we looked at the options of a modular versus a stick build, and all things considered, said a stick build we felt had greater overall value to the district. And so we did, move the goalposts, so to speak.
And with this extra cost, it came under the original cost projection for a modular.
That is correct.
So we got a stick built that was cheaper than a modular, including this extra cost right now. It's just because it wasn't a light item before, we have to approve it. Is that correct?
Right, so effectively, these are, when we first proposed the project, these were not budgeted at the time because the scope of the project was different. You're correct.
Okay, so this is still cheaper than what we originally voted to approve.
Yes, sir.
Anyone have any other questions about this?
I move to approve amended contract as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Can we see this at the next meeting if possible?
Mr. Chair, might we get like a 5-minute recess here?
Sure. Let's get a 5-minute recess. We're going out of session at 8:39. All right, let's come back into session.
I'll bring my cup next time.
We left off on M5, extend HMK fee schedule amendment for South Shore Elementary.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that we were at a place where you had a motion, there was no second, I asked for a recess. I think the motion is still on the table.
It is.
Procedurally, I would second the motion. We have a project, we need to finish the project. All other things aside, we need a project manager who can finish this project and get kids in classrooms.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any dissents?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Okay, up next is new business, GAACE Memorandum of Understanding, Mechanic and Auto Service Worker Pay, and Miss Huska. I have a hard time with your name, I probably.
Hugh Zefka.
Who's Zefska?
Hugh.
Hugh
Zefska.
Zefska. Thank you.
You're close. You're close.
Chairman, can I speak just for a second?
Yes.
I just want to recognize the work that Heather and Helen have begun to do as we begin to clean up. And, you know, we're basically going to spend most of the year in a bargaining stance as we work to clean up things in the contract, look at wages, and I appreciate Helen and Heather's work on this.
So what you have are three memorandums, kind of a bundle, and I'll just go through all three at once, and if you have any questions. The Memorandum of Understanding for Mechanic and Auto Service Worker Pay was something that began last year with interim Superintendent Rob Saxton, working with Case Bowman and also with Helen and the association. There was a concerted look at those specific positions. It's just a handful. And an agreement at the time that we did need to look at a targeted increase in their pay prior to even our bargaining year. But as Superintendent Saxton was going to be leaving, we knew Superintendent Gardner was going to be coming. It was just kind of on a hold until Andy could get here and take a look at it himself, wrap his head around where we were budget-wise, and we've recently been able to come back around to this agreement to increase their rate of pay. So it was something that actually has been on the books for quite a while and an agreement. Then the standby rate of pay, that has to do with our transportation department and bus drivers who are taking students to and from activities that may happen during the day, out at the extended day. Previously, our district would pay the bus drivers their rate of pay as they were driving to and from, but during the standby time, they received a lesser rate of pay. And again, a conversation that began last year that we've been in agreement, they need to receive their hourly rate of pay for the entire time that they're on the trip. Whether they're waiting for these students to finish their activity or not, that's their time. And so that's the standby rate, is to acknowledge and pay them their hourly rate. And then the Transportation Insurance Eligibility Extension, MOU, is something that began several years ago. It's a process in which our transportation department drivers earn and acquire their eligibility for insurance. There's some complexity to it, but because you're not necessarily driving every day, all day, we look at some accumulated time and how that affects your insurance that you're earning for future time with us. That's the real basic piece of that. It's something we've had in play for several years, and there is an agreement to continue doing that this year. And so all of these are nothing new or really unexpected. The conversations began last year with Rob Saxton, and we're just now getting to the point that we can wrap them up and move them forward as we should. And they're all discussions that Helen and I are already knowing we want to have within our bargaining work this year. And I just want to take a moment to say I had a great meeting with the association, with Helen and several others, as we looked at what we wanted this year to be like for our bargaining sessions with them. And I'm looking forward to them. I think we have good partners to have important conversations with. They could be difficult conversations, but I feel the collaborative interest, both from the association and from the district side, to really address some of these economic issues. And as Superintendent Gardner said, look at the contract itself and some areas that we both have interest in discussing. And so with Helen here, I wanted to say, I think we're going to have an important year to be able to move things forward for our staff. And I'll just tail that with Director Thompson and Director Wilson, your time working with us on the licensed bargaining, very appreciated to having you there and your input and insight. And we'll be looking at who can represent the board for our classified bargaining. So I can answer questions if you'd like.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the memorandum of understanding, the standby rate of pay is presented.
For N2 for the bus driver, okay?
But I'm out of order here, so I would do N1 as well. Move to approve the memorandum of understanding, the mechanic and auto service worker pay is presented as well.
Okay, do I hear a motion for that first N1 item? Do I hear a second?
Oh, I second.
All in favor of move to approve memorandum of understanding mechanic and auto service worker as presented? Aye.
Aye.
Any dissents?
So I would go back to N2 and restate that motion to approve
Okay.
the memorandum of understanding, standby rate of pay as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any dissents?
Now would go to N3 to move approval of the memorandum of understanding, transportation insurance eligibility extension.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any dissents?
You ready for N4?
Okay, we're ready for that N4.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the edu staff contract as presented.
Do I have a second?
Well, can we, I don't know what this is.
I haven't read it yet, yeah.
Let's discuss it then.
Whoa there.
Again, this says like Medford School District, and I'm like, wait, what's going on?
So Jane and Heather have done a great deal of work there. I'll let Heather talk to you a little bit about the specifics. This is a move to address our substitute shortage.
Yeah, that's right.
And EduStaff has a contract with Medford Schools that we are all able, a new district is able to piggyback on that contract, which is why you see that language. And I just want to recognize Heather and Jane for their work with that company to make sure this is going to happen. Heather, do you want to talk a little bit about the specifics of the transition?
Sure. EduStaff is a business you can contract and hire and partner with, really, who will do the recruiting, the hiring, the training, and the placing of substitutes, which we currently do in-house ourselves. I have to give a shout out to Karen Cortez, an HR specialist who is our lead in handling this every day. It's a great big part of her day. All the districts around us are contracting with EduStaff. And so anybody who is hired with EduStaff can look at their profile and be able to pick up substitute teacher positions, classified assistant positions, food service positions, custodian positions, and then they can choose which district they're going to for the day. And we have been the one district who has not been involved. This began over a year ago when I took over the position from Randy Shield, and as he left, the one thing he said is look into EduStaff. I believe it will be beneficial to us to increase the pool of substitutes that we have. So Case Bowman and I spent all last year talking with EduStaff, learning about it, looking at what are the pros to it, what are the changes to our staff, our substitute staff. And again, with the change of superintendents, we just weren't at the place to commit at that time. So we brought it back to Superintendent Gardner. Andy and Jane have both experienced this in their previous district, and so the input was really great, working with Jane on that. And we made the decision, this will increase the pool of substitutes we have access to. Instead of trying to do our own recruiting and our own hiring, our numbers are much smaller than if we now partner and contract with EduStaff. We are looking at a transition this year. And so that will take several months. Our target start is the first week of March, when they would then be placing substitutes in our system. And if any substitutes are listening, you will be hearing from me next week, a letter detailing this more, but it does not change for them on how they get into our system to look at jobs that they can pick up. They'll still get into frontline absence management. It's not a whole new system for them. We think we probably have some substitutes that might be part of EduStaff and also picking up jobs in other districts, so they won't have a change because they're already in the system. And it turns out that EduStaff's recruiter lives in Albany, is one of our parents, and is looking forward to recruiting for Albany and growing that pool that kind of live here as well. So You'll see that Superintendent Gardner's signature is on it as our agreement to want to move forward with that, which is really a signal to you guys of this is something we find very important to increase the number of subs we have.
Thank you for that explanation. I think we're looking for a second on Roger's motion to move to approve.
Sure sounds like a good idea.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any dissents? Okay, N5, student investment account. Ms. Harlan.
Chair Morris, members of the board, I submit to you the Student Investment Account Annual Report. This is a report that's due every year to school boards to report on how the funds from the student investment account were spent and what the progress of the plan is. So as a reminder, Student Investment Account was part of the Student Success Act, and this account is funded through our corporate activity tax. The first year of the SIA, as we call it, account was $2.2 million in funds that we received for this, and this year it was $7.3 million.
Ms. Harlan, just because that seems like a huge jump, and so
That's-
how did that happen?
Yeah,
Did they
that's a-
phase it in, or all of a sudden?
Yeah,
Tell
no,
me how
great
that worked.
question. We did a ton of work with community engagement to have our community prioritize the needs of our students. And we did all of this work, we turned it in, and I think it was literally the next day, or perhaps the day after, that the state told us, we don't have, it had just gone into effect, we don't have the funds. It won't be fully funded. We think it will be funded by about half. So after we had done this huge plan and gone out to the community to say, what are your priorities? Then we got word that our plans and all of the school districts would be funded by a little less than half that first year. And then after on year 2, they said, we think it will be fully funded, and then it has increased. And so fully funded originally for us, I think, was about $6.2 million. And the first year, it just was not a fully funded student investment account.
Okay,
That's
thank you for
because
that explanation.
The time when it actually came into effect was only a partial year that the tax began to be collected, and so that was the partial year.
Thank you.
Right. Great question. So just a reminder, the requirements of the fund. So SIA is rooted to really engage families, the larger community, and focus on specific student groups. Those focal student groups are students of color, students who experience disabilities, students who are emerging bilinguals, and students who are navigating poverty, experiencing homelessness, or in foster care. Also required is ongoing authentic community engagement. So required is public comment on the plan presented publicly to a school board every year, that there's an application and consistent use of an equity lens that center these student focal groups. And then we have actually quarterly reporting, annual auditing, and annual reporting for the funds with ODE. So how does GAPS use those funds? Well, here are some ways that you'll see that actually realized and recognized in schools with kids. The fund currently funds 10 elementary counselors, 8 kindergarten teachers, 9 elementary behavior supports, 2 middle school behavior deans. The places where you see are FTE because they could be 4 half-time people, but the total amount is in that FTE. The elimination of pay-to-play sports fees in the amount of $280,000 a year for high school students, middle school librarians, behavior support team, that's at the district level, middle school extracurricular programs, you mentioned that earlier, elementary instructional coaches, and then mental health contracts and partnerships. Just some of that, that fund.
Lisa, can you speak just a little bit about the mental health contracts? How often are we able to fully expend that? Stephanie had said that there's, they're not always able to even supply that.
Yep, so the school district and their partners have struggled to keep, to retain, and to hire enough therapists that are specifically work with young children or adolescents. We have partnerships literally with anyone and everyone who will partner with us, but we have partnerships with Trillium, with North Albany Wellness, certainly with Lynn County Mental Health, with some private practice. We also are entering into a partnership with Daybreak, which allows us, this was just recently, allows us to provide 100 students with 13 sessions. They're virtual, so our ability to engage bilingual therapists and a number of therapists are greater than what are locally provided, and the time between referral and intake is 4 to 5 days. And so we're trying to prioritize that for the most, for the students who are experiencing the most crisis, because it cuts down that 5-month wait time to be able to actually see intake within 4 or 5 days. And so those are some of the things that certainly, Ophelia's Place also, I'm probably missing a few. Some of the changes or some of the expectations of this grant that we have to report on for ODE are that every school recognizes, honors the strengths of the community that they're serving. That includes educators and students. That an equity lens is in place, adopted, and woven through policies, procedures, and practices. So that's from the school board down to the practices that we see in school. That we have data teams that are forming and that review schools' data. So you heard a little bit about the district data routine process that we have, and the expectation is schools have similar ones to be able to adjust the supports that students have. That schools and districts have an inventory of literacy assessment tools and curriculum and interventions that are being used, and that's part of the MTSS work that I spoke about earlier. That we have some increased communication about student growth, about literacy specifically, and individualized supports for students, and that schools and districts together co-develop and communicate kind of a shared understanding in the community about what does it mean to be on track by the end of 9th grade, and how do we work together to ensure that happens for students. We're required to report on annual questions about actions, policies, changes in practice, barriers, how we're including ongoing engagement of our students in our community, and how our choices have, what we've learned and how it's impacted outcomes for students and what we'll do in the future. Every year, the SIA plan, the annual progress, so the answers to these questions, the data, all have to be, along with the board meeting where it was presented and the board meeting minutes, are linked to the district website, and that's a requirement of the plan as well. So I talked about what ODE expects to see. They also say, here's some things that we would like to see, and here's some things that we would love to see. So here are the basic requirements, and here are the ways that you can stretch. We'd like to see evidence of educators using student-centered approaches. We'd like to see you foster student voice and reinforce student engagement. And we'd like for districts to have an audit of 9th grade course scheduling to look to see what are core courses that are needed, how do we do some course placements, and are we disaggregating that by student group to see which courses are serving which students and how we can better adjust. What they would love to see is school districts have a specific process to analyze and identify barriers that disconnect students from school, and how we might overcome some of those. And that for students to have multiple avenues for that kind of post-secondary, like what are your dreams? What do you want to accomplish in life? What are some things you'd like to do post-high school? Have a clear picture and a plan that schools help students realize that. So how, our community engagement and outreach for the SIA plan was really just a reminder for everyone here that that was the foundational pieces that we built the strategic plan off of. So it's where we came up with our community group that looked at our mission, our vision, and our priorities as a district. So all of that input from students and community is what got us here, which is our district priorities: rigorous and engaging academic learning, social, emotional, and mental health, and equitable systems and outcomes. So that was, the SIA plan was the basis for our strategic plan. And I am available for any questions.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious about the money. So have we built the fund up to 7.3 million? We're currently sitting on that much cash?
No, so what happens is we, by quarter, tell the state this is how we're spending the money. Most of it is in salaries. We have quite a bit of staff. And so we don't necessarily get it in one chunk and then sit on it. We have a grant management system where we
But we
we
project
collect.
we could spend $7.3 million today? Or we've already spent some of that money?
No, we will spend $7.3 million by the time the year is out. will expend all of that fund and need to every single year. So most of it is in salary, so no, there's still some of that
So
money.
we're getting 7.3 million per year, roughly?
Correct.
Okay, now I understand.
Correct.
Okay.
Roger?
So is this from the gross receipts tax they passed, or is this a different fund?
The CAT?
It's the corporate activity tax.
Okay. Do we know what year tax receipts is this the 2021 year that ended in tax returns, or?
So the biennium is projected to bring in money at that time, and it pays for services in that time. There's not like a lag of collections then paying into the next year.
So I'm trying to calculate going forward. So if the 2-year biennium was calendar year 20 and calendar year 21, and this money is for a single year, right? So, but you are effectively blending receipts from those 2 years to get to this number? Because in 2020, for at least 6-7 months, our economy was basically shut down. And if that's part of the blend going forward, we should see much more money than that.
So historically, one of the things about the CAT tax is even during COVID, it still performed in advance of expectation during those years.
Well,
And, go ahead.
well, I would just argue that their expectations were way off then. And the number has a much higher ceiling,
That's probably true.
because you can't.
Yeah.
So is the concern the just sustainability of the fund in the coming years?
No, the opposite is, I think that it will,
Got it.
if I was betting, I would bet it's going to grow substantially, especially if you included calendar year 2020 in this
First part.
kind of projection. So that's great. I'm not, I'm not used to the terms in the context of receiving state funds and applying those funds. I'm not used to the terms expect to see, like to see, love to see. What's that mean?
That means when we have an annual process where it audits the work that we've done, the decisions we've made, and the data that we've seen, the Department of Education says, here are the expectations and the requirements that you must adhere by, and here's the path for progress that we would like to see you continue on. So if you meet all of the requirements and your system is ready to take on the next level, here are some things that you should think about and consider.
So is there a reference point? Is there a set of administrative rules? I would assume that
No.
this wasn't in the statute.
No, because nothing is going to be in the statute that describes specifically the implementation of what that is. That's the work of the Department of Education. So are we legally bound to say the thing that we would love to see you must do? No, but there aren't any things that I see of the love to see that would be things I would say we shouldn't do. So making sure our kiddos have an adult to plan with their post-secondary, I think is a great thing. Having an audit of our 9th grade courses to see how many courses and sections are offered, I think would be great. There wouldn't be anything I would be opposed to.
So it's not in statute, it's not an administrative rule, it's just very subjective based on who does our audit?
Not exactly, but I understand your confusion.
Yeah, I'm concerned that the target moves subjectively going forward as this revenue continues to increase, and I'd like to see in writing somewhere what rules we're all playing by, so we follow those, and what discretion we actually have as a staff and a board at the local level.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
There isn't anything that needs to be done. This is a report that
Move
needs
to
to be.
accept? Yeah, I don't know. Oh, we don't need to, that's fine.
No, it just needs to be presented at a public meeting and so that our community has the opportunity to know what's happening, and it will be posted to our district website.
Okay, hey, thank you very much, Lisa. Okay, N6, Mr. Bowman. or
Yes, sir.
Mr. Singleton.
Yeah, no, if you're antsy to move to approve something, this will be it then.
Okay.
So through the ECF program, the Emergency Connectivity Fund, we are able to apply for waves of grants effectively to reimburse us on technology costs. Recently, we were pleasantly surprised, learned that we would get 100% of our expenses on this particular purchase reimbursed. So we're requesting the board to approve this purchase, and it will be 100% reimbursed through the ECF fund.
Okay. I'll start with the question. So I know in the past, we had Chromebooks and we weren't really tracking them that well, who had them and who was responsible for them and all that kind of thing. I would hope we have a system in place, so we're going to know that, serial number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is had by Judy Smith or somebody, right?
Absolutely, and in fact, with the ECF, it's even more important than that because the specific use of the fund has to be to one-to-one learning, which means we can't use these in the K-5 classrooms, which are cart-based.
Okay.
So they very, very specifically need to be tracked to a student when they're checked out to an individual student.
Okay, great. And we have a good set of rules, what we need to do about that?
Yeah, I think
Mr. Gardner?
Rob has come quite a ways this year in terms of getting a hold of the inventory. If you'll recall, we have a cliff coming. Right?
Yes.
And this is about, 22% of the total coming. And I think it can really help us then to smooth and move us into a sustainable format with less expenditure. And so
Well,
I think it's a good thing.
I would assume in a perfect world, every 3 or 4 years, we want to replace these, right? So, this is our start.
Yeah.
Right? So, so that's fantastic. I didn't mean to monopolize. Go ahead, Roger.
I intend to support it. I was knocked back a little bit when I learned that we had adopted the policy that we were going to take care of this, but we hadn't identified a specific funding source. And what you all told me is coming to be true, I guess, that you could go get grant funds to do it. So what's the source of the funding?
I believe this is federal funding.
Okay? And like we
I
get,
think it originates through the E-rate program.
tell me about that.
So E-rate is funds that are taken through the Pacific Power and taken in. And
Okay.
you can apply for different tiers of E-rate funding. We receive every year level 1, and this is a tier 2 E-rate.
Okay, so to the extent that this pot of, that grants could ever be an ongoing, reoccurring thing, it's, people will continue to turn lights on and buy HVAC systems and do things like that, anyway, so, yeah, I'm supportive, thank you.
So this is something we think we can do next year also?
Now, this level is application,
Okay.
and I don't think it can be counted on every year.
Correct.
We will get E-rate funding every year, but not at this level.
Yeah, this was an application separate, and we were given an award.
Yep. And there were some details that made us eligible for this when earlier it looked we may not have been. So some good fortune and some good planning on our part.
Great. Okay, do I hear a motion? Oh, go ahead. I apologize.
Have we made any progress on locating our current Chromebooks and knowing where they're at and getting it quantified?
Rob came in several weeks ago and we're closer to a true number. I think we were able to resolve some things, but we still have a number of Chromebooks outstanding that we need still to provide to some elementary schools. And so, but I think we have a tighter number, but it's still a somber number to look at in terms of when they ultimately, those 2 big years of purchase come off. We have to make hay to get there.
And with more devices out there as well, we're seeing trends as far as percent broken and lost, and just all the trends that would sort of let us project what we can anticipate for loss year
I
over
was just
year.
going to ask what our loss rate is. Do we have any notion yet?
If I spoke by memory, I'd feel bad. I'd rather get you the data.
That's fine.
and
Yeah,
present it to
I'd be
you.
interested to know that.
I do think that we're not too far away from being able to project a number annually that can inform our budget, right? So,
Which is, the ultimate goal, so we can kind of put a number on this thing and get a handle on it.
Your over-under is 38%.
It's under.
Okay, great, good news.
It's way under. I was surprised.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Heather.
I just have one clarification I need to make when you're done with the Chromebooks.
Oh.
Previously, as I talked about EduStaff, I referenced Randy Shield and looked around and nobody said anything. Randy Shield is a former superintendent I worked with who also worked with Rob Saxton closely. It's Randy Larry.
Okay.
And somebody sent me a text like, well, who's Randy Shield? So I just need to give a shout out to Randy Larry talking about EduStaff and doing some pre-work, but nobody here raised their hand to say, who are you talking about? So I feel like I should, Randy Larry.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. Do I hear a motion on N6, the Chromebook purchase?
I move to approve the reimbursable purchase of 2,200 Chromebooks as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I second that motion.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We have no future agenda items. Other business? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn. You guys want to be here online?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any dissents?